good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Thank you, Jean, for the welcome. As she mentioned, my name is Nicole Swanson, and welcome to Teaching Artistry in the Business World. Hopefully that's where you expected to be today. And if not, well, surprise, that's where you are. You're welcome to stay, even if that wasn't where you thought you would be. I'd just like to mention, Jean suggested adding pronouns or changing your name. I would like to suggest, as I have done, if you could change your name to your first name, your pronouns, and then also your primary field of arts, just so that we can kind of easily see what fields are represented here. And I would also invite you all, if you are comfortable, to turn on your camera. We all know that it's a lot more fun to actually see the faces that we are having a discussion with. I'm going to start out today by telling you a tale of two performing artists. The first one we will call Alex. Alex began playing an instrument at a very young age. And since they were 15 years old, Alex dreamed of becoming a professional musician. But the road was difficult. Alex ended up going to a state university on scholarship for the bachelor's degree in order to save money. During their freshman year, Alex had a shoulder injury that led to a bit of an identity crisis. If not a musician, who really were they? Thankfully, with the help of various doctors, Alex recovered enough to keep playing, but this once straight A student finished their undergrad, skipping class frequently and doing just the bare minimum. Alex auditioned for graduate schools, but faced rejection letters and ended up taking a 2-year gap before going back to school. The dream of becoming a professional musician was still alive, but Alex found orchestral auditions to be a very difficult process. In the last 15 years, Alex has taken at least 50 auditions and has won very few positions. COVID hit Alex hard, both professionally and personally. Gigs and auditions dried up. Alex got the virus pre-vaccine, and complications led to surgery in 2021 with a painful recovery. Today, Alex still loves being a musician, but is underemployed, piecing together gigs and freelance opportunities. Now, our second, we'll call them Sam. Sam grew up in a musical family and decided at age 15, while at a prestigious summer camp, that they would be a professional musician someday. Self-described as compulsively well-rounded, Sam chose to attend university, not conservatory, and received a minor in journalism as well as a Bachelor of Music. Wanting to expand their horizons, Sam applied to 3 of the most competitive conservatories for graduate school. In doing so, Sam connected with a teacher they knew was the next right step. Undeterred by a rejection from that teacher's conservatory, Sam made 2 more attempts and was accepted on their 3rd try. They graduated 2 years later, having served as section leader in the orchestra, a featured chamber musician, as well as a partner with the professional orchestra across the street. Since then, Sam's career has been a grand adventure. They served 4 years on the front stand of a major symphony orchestra, played as a backup musician on American Idol, negotiated a collective bargaining agreement, and spearheaded a teaching partnership for student musicians in underserved communities, among other things. When COVID struck, Sam chose to pursue business school, not knowing what the music and education industries would look like when the pandemic ended, but knowing that well-equipped leaders would be needed. Today, Sam is fielding several exciting opportunities as a musician, a teacher, and a leader in the industry. So, some of you may have guessed Sam and Alex are the same person. And in fact, Sam and Alex are both me. And I decided to introduce myself this way to illustrate a point that I know you all know, but we're starting with it anyway, which is framing is everything, right? what you choose to include, what you choose to omit, how far you're zoomed in, how far you're zoomed out, that changes the story and the experience for your audience significantly. So why am I here, right? As you heard in my story, I have been a violist nearly all my life and a teaching artist since 2006. And yes, when COVID struck, I decided to go to business school. I didn't know, none of us knew, right, how long the pandemic would last or what the music world would look like once we finally got out of it, if we ever did. I was accepted to Stanford Graduate School of Business and did a one-year accelerated master's program called the MSX. In this program, there were 68 mid-career students alongside 900 MBA candidates. Throughout my year, I was continually struck by three things. Number one, how many of my classes incorporated principles and skills that I have developed as a musician and a teaching artist. Number two, how much my professors and my peers respected my artistic training and talents. They thought it was the coolest thing ever. And number three, how much discretionary capital is present in the business world. It's kind of nuts. There's an enormous opportunity for exceptional teaching artists to expand their work into corporate environments. So I'm here to lead the conversation about how we can make that happen. And as I have told everybody who has been involved with planning this session, I'm nervous. And I'm just going to say that out loud. I'm nervous. This is a big topic. I believe there are some far-reaching implications here. I really want to do this topic justice. And at the same time, I understand that I am coming at it from my own perspective and my own experiences. And the beauty of having this conversation is that then it expands and becomes bigger, and we see different perspectives and different solutions, and we all get to imagine this together. So thank you all so much for joining me today. And now that you know a little bit about me, we are going to get to know you a little bit. I realize that a lot of you already know each other, but I see some familiar faces, not a million. We are going to jump in to a Jamboard. Carrie's going to give us the link. And I am going to share my screen. Where'd it go? Jamboard. Can everybody see that? Great. So if you are unfamiliar with Jamboard, it is a Google product that works sort of as an electronic whiteboard. We are going to be using it later in this session for another activity. So this is a really good opportunity to make sure that it is working on your end. For those of you who are using a tablet or a phone, you may need to download an external app. If you have any issues, please type them in the chat and we will try to troubleshoot with you. So we have a map here. I see, yes, you guys are already jumping in. I love this. We have a map of the world. At the bottom left corner, there are a number of small yellow diamond shapes. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab one of those little diamonds and drag it to your location. And if you accidentally enlarge or distort one of the diamonds, you can delete and grab a new one, or always Control Z. So, unsurprisingly, so far we're seeing a large representation from the United States. I also see one in South America, and I did see earlier in the chat we have at least one person here from Nigeria. Ooh, yes. So we've got some people experimenting with other. If you're finding that you're drawing instead of grabbing, you want to move yourself to the arrow here. That allows you to grab, if that makes sense. I love Jamboard. I was introduced to it while I was at Stanford. And I think there's a lot of cool things that you can do with it. And this is just one little example. I'll give it just a couple more seconds here if other people are still adding their locations. But again, unsurprisingly, given the time zone that we're in, we are very North and South America heavy here, but I'm seeing representation from East Coast and West Coast and Midwest. So welcome to all of you. I'm going to stop sharing right now. And now we are going to do a little exercise using the raise hand function. So just to make sure everybody has found it, has located it, can everybody raise their hand on reactions and raise hand? Let's see if you can find it. It should be down on the menu on the bottom. Seeing most people getting it. A couple of accidental emojis along with that, which is great. But okay, so you've got most people figuring out how to raise their hands. Excellent. Okay, you can all lower your hands. And now the first question. So raise your hand if you are here and you are not a teaching artist. I'm just curious to see if we have people in the room who are potentially here for other reasons. Oh, okay. Couple. Okay. For those of you who are teaching artists, oh, quite a few. All right, everybody can lower their hands again. Okay. And now, yes, honorary teaching artists. Thank you, Eric. Now I want to see what sort of diversity and breadth of experience we have in the room. So for those of you who are teaching artists, if you've been a teaching artist for at least 1 year, which I'm assuming is probably most of you, go ahead and raise your hand if you've been a teaching artist for at least 1 year. Okay, and then if you have been a teaching artist for at least 3 years, keep your hand up. If not, go ahead and lower. If you've been a teaching artist for at least 5 years, keep your hand up. If not, go ahead and lower it. If you've been a teaching artist for at least 10 years, gosh, you guys are like veterans. We've got a room full of veterans here. This is awesome. Okay, at least 15 years, keep your hands up. A couple drop off there. All right, 20 years or more. Awesome. I love this. 43 years. Fantastic. Yeah, those of you who are over 20, feel free to type in the chat how many years you've been doing this work. And then everybody can feel free to put their hands down for the next question. Because the next question is, raise your hand if you knew what a teaching artist was before you actually became one. A handful. But not many, right? I think a lot of us have sort of stumbled into this profession because we have skills and experience from other areas that we have been able to apply. Yep. So I am amazed at how much this field has changed and grown over the past several decades, largely thanks to, quite frankly, a lot of you who are here in the room. So that's really cool that we have this group of people here with us. I'm also curious to know if you majored or minored in your artistic field in college. Raise your hand if that's the case. Yeah, figured there'd be a lot of those. If you majored or minored in something else, feel free to type that in the chat and see what other backgrounds you all have. And then, big question, really, that actually doesn't involve raising a hand. Why are you here today? What are you hoping to get out of this session? Feel free to type it in the chat. We have maybe 2 minutes. We could take a couple of hand raises if somebody has something burning that they want to share with the group as to why they're here today. Lynn, is that a hand raise because you want to share? No. Okay.
No, sorry.
Okay, just checking. All right. Awesome. Jeff has already run a residency in a corporate headquarters. A lot of people wanting to expand their work, wanting to learn new ways to reach other communities. Great. Other people also doing corporate work. Awesome. All right. Hopefully you all have a pretty good idea of who's in the room and who is part of this conversation here. And we are going to jump right in to the content. So let me manage my tech here. Here's today's plan. We are basically going to run through a market analysis project of what teaching artistry does and or could look like in the business world. So we will explore the following questions. Number 1, is there a market? Number 2, can I make money? And number 3, how? That's all, right? Easy questions. And we're going to do that a variety of ways, a couple polls. We're going to do a Jamboard exercise. There will be a breakout room exercise, which I hope you will all participate in. At the end, there will be an invitation to join a working group and where we will really dive into a lot of this much more deeply. And then our official session will end at the 90-minute mark, but we will stay open for another 30 minutes beyond that for open discussion and Q&A. So let's jump right into the first question, which is, can I make money? And Carrie is going to launch a poll, or Robert, somebody's going to launch a poll. We have a 2-question poll here. So I'll give you all a couple minutes to answer these questions. And for those of you who aren't seeing, the first question is, what is your average fee in US dollars for a single session? Less than 100, 100 to 250, 251 to 500, or more than 500. The second question is, what is your average fee in US dollars for an all-day session? Either under 250, 251 to 500, 501 to 1,000. Oh, sorry, I meant there to be one of the things that I've learned since we all went to virtual stuff is always assume that the tech will glitch or not work somehow, even if you've done a run through. I meant to have an option here in the poll in question 2 for more than 1,000. So if your all day session is anywhere over $500, you can select that option. We've got 78% participation here, which is pretty good. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Sharon says, like driving through LA, always assume there'll be traffic. Oh yes, when I lived in LA for a few years and moved there from Minnesota, where I currently live right now. And yeah, I always like double whatever Google says it's going to take. All right, 87% participation. We are going to end the poll so you can all see the results. So can you all see what popped up there? Great. So let's see, our answers here for the first one. 25% of you charge less than $100 for a single session. 32% are at 101 to 250. 21% of you are charging $251 to $500 for a single session, and 14% of you are raking in more than $500 for a single session. So good for you. I want you on my working group so that we can tell other people how to do that. The question number 2, okay, what is your average fee for an all-day session? Just one of you, 4% charging less than $250. 32% of you are in the $250 to $500 mark, and 39% of you charge at least $500 for an all-day session. So those are the results there. I'm going to share with you now. I did a very informal survey of some of my colleagues and asked them what their companies would expect to pay for a team building type workshop. And these are the answers. This is for a small group. So for instance, something that would take place in a classroom or in a conference room. And as you'll see, sorry, my poll is freaking out here. As you'll see, the answers are distributed, right, as we would expect, just as your answers were distributed. But look at everybody who's actually willing to pay $1,000 for a 2-hour session for a small group. Look at everybody who's willing to pay $2,000 for a 2 to 4 session for a small group. Look at everybody who's willing to pay at least $2,000 or maybe even $5,000 for a full day session. And then for a large group, the price goes up, right? If you're holding an event in a large ballroom or an event space for a big audience, the value goes up, the willingness to pay goes up. So again, this is a small sample size. There were a couple of other questions that I asked in the survey, which I'll get to a little bit later. But this is one of the biggest points that I wanted to start by illustrating is this. There's money out there. And I know that talking about money can be an uncomfortable topic sometimes, but we don't always have to cling to the starving artist mindset, right? And this is just a small illustration of the potential that is actually out there. Some of you may be wondering what exactly it is that these companies are paying for. Some of you already have experience working with these companies and you know exactly what it is, but there's this field of coaching that is huge and growing. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And coaching is something that we are entirely familiar with as artists. We've literally experienced it all of our lives. But one thing that differentiates modern day coaching from, I would say, traditional arts training is its emphasis on asking questions. An executive coach isn't there to provide answers, but to ask questions and provide a framework for exploring possibilities within those questions. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I'm going to say that again. An executive coach isn't there to provide answers, but to ask questions and provide a framework for exploring possibilities within those questions. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is basically doing what great teaching artists do all the time. So, next poll. Question number 1, have you ever presented to a business audience? Your options are never, once or twice, or multiple times. And then question 2 is, what are your roadblocks to working with business audiences? I don't know where to start, makes me uncomfortable. My presentations aren't applicable to those audiences. I already have enough well-paying work and don't need to diversify, or other. And if you answer other, please type that in the chat box. Okay. Right now we're pretty evenly split between people who have and haven't done this before. So far, a lot of people are saying they just don't know where to start. And some answers in the chat. Great. We've got 80% of you who have replied so far. Let's see if we can get a couple more in. I'll wait. Minute 83. All right, I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here are the results. All right, so can you all see this? These are the results from the 30 of you who responded here. 40% of you have never presented to a business audience, okay? You're new. 40% of you have once or twice. And 20% of you, there are 6 people in the room who have done this multiple times, which is awesome. So again, we have a variety of experience here in the room. Question number 2, what are your roadblocks to working with business audiences? Most of you just say, I don't know where to start. Some of you say, it makes me uncomfortable. 20% of you say, my presentations aren't applicable to those audiences. Ooh, there's one person who says, I already have enough well-paying work and don't need to diversify. I'm very curious as to who that is and how they got to that point. You don't necessarily need to out yourself right now, but perhaps you could send a private message to one of the hosts if you are willing to share. And then we have 11 who said other. I'm going to read some of these answers here in the chat box. Greg says, a challenge to working in business settings is getting the purchases to understand the value of my offering. I hear that. Eric says, there is no predictable way to stir up those gigs. They come to him just unpredictable. Nicole says she worked at a large corporation for 6 years in Europe and wants to get started again in the USA. Awesome. Glenn says he hasn't focused on this in the past, but might be ready to do so now. Catherine says she has a hard time knowing what the needs of the business are in terms of coaching or workshops. And Christopher says he spends his time on schools and senior establishments, and time is less for business, but would like that to change. So just perhaps that the percentage of the work that you're currently doing, there's room for a shift there. And then I kind of pitch for my business that brings me before a business audience. I speak confidently for my art brand. Love that. What we're going to do now is address some of those things. We are going back to Jamboard and do an activity. So Carrie, if you could share the link. Oh, sorry, I need to find. Okay, so there's the link, and I'm going to share my screen. So this is like the Post-it note exercise that we've all probably done a million times in in-person activities, right? Another function of Jamboard here, if you can see my cursor, sticky note, and it'll pop up here. I want you to think about the audiences that you currently work with, right? On a blue sticky note, write the name of that audience. So perhaps it's elementary school students. Save that, and then technology is not perfect, right? So once you actually publish that, cancel out of it in order to be able to manipulate this sticky, okay? Throw that up there, okay? And then make a yellow sticky note. What are the needs of the elementary school students that you serve? What do they need? What are their teachers hoping for? Maybe one of their big needs is fun, right? So you put it there. So we're just going to take a couple of minutes here and grab a sticky, throw it all up. Okay. Awesome. Yep. And they end up kind of stacking on top of each other. Yes, I love all of this here. Okay. So audiences that I'm seeing so far, nonprofits, arts organizations, higher education STEAM, teaching artists who serve elementary and high school students, nonprofit. Oh, here's another nonprofits. Let's just delete that one. We can do one. Artists, K-12 STEAM school, senior groups. Okay. Let's spend a few more minutes kind of moving ideas around here. And right now I see that the blue and the yellow are kind of separate. And I think what will help us really visualize this is if we match the yellow and the blue. So what is it specifically that artists need? What is it specifically that elementary school students need? K-12 students, those kind of the same. Great. So which audience needs social interaction, mental and perceptual interaction, and stimuli? I mean, I could think of a lot of audiences actually that need that, but whoever wrote this yellow sticky, if you want to grab that and put it with the audience you think it belongs to. Strategic planning and community engagement. My guess is that would go with arts organizations. Oh, literacy and math skill catch up since COVID. Yeah, that I'm assuming goes over here with middle school and K through 12 students. Right, seniors experience in dementia. Workplace wellness for for-profits. Great, we've got somebody working with US embassies, consulates, international community organizations, nonprofits, concert audiences. I would encourage the author of this sticky note to actually split that into multiple so that we have a single audience on each sticky note, because different audiences, generally speaking, have different needs, not always, but generally speaking. I'll give you all another minute to rearrange some things here. And things that I'm seeing on the yellow sticky notes in particular. The ability to articulate their impact. Where did teaching artists go? There we go. Honing classroom skills, visioning, belonging, right? To be the core group on a project and not an add-on, social emotional learning, donor engagement, connecting classroom learning with innovation, application, and urgent climate issues. Social emotional learning again here. Music education about African American US history and culture, access to arts instruction, fulfilling arts and music curriculum goals, unique arts and cultural experiences, improving confidence, empowerment, personal development, asking questions and creating ideas, strategic planning, community engagement, again, supporting cognitive and emotional health. Okay, look at all of these things you guys do. I mean, really, just take a look at this for a minute and look at the value that you are collectively bringing to the world. Everything that is on one of these yellow stickies is something that exists because of you. That's pretty cool. What we're going to do now, feel free to keep jamming away on this first page of the Jamboard, but you'll see up at the top, this says 1 out of 2. We're going to now move over to the second page. And I want you to use a green sticky note to name potential business audiences. Okay, whether that's for those of you who are working in the business world who have, go ahead and name those audiences. For those of you who haven't, use your imagination. Let's say tech companies, or let's say small business owners. Let's say mid-level managers, marketing firms, military, HR departments. Okay. What other audiences can you think of? And what are their needs? What do these audiences need? Or what do you think they need? And it can be things that you don't think you can provide, right? So for example, I'm just going to throw on here, tech companies, all of these really, they need strong internal tech structure. They need, healthy financial practices, so even if it's stuff that you think is not in your purview, not things that you would be able to coach to or talk about, throw it up there anyway. What I'm seeing so far on yellow stickies: advanced teamwork and communication skills. Great. How to collaborate using yes and. More efficient ways of anticipating marketing trends. Creativity. Situation analysis for perceptual skills. Visioning. Boards of directors. Thank you to whoever put that on there. Okay, let's take a few minutes and flesh this out for a while. Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not. Thank you. The green stickies are the second one over here. The other things that are showing up on the yellow stickies: creative space making, cultivating a strong audience for their products and services, stress reduction. That's kind of for everybody, right? Everybody needs that. We could put that on every single audience as a need. Decision-making, wellness experiences, building a climate in their business that is joyful and inspiring. Well-being. I'm seeing a lot of well-being here. I love that. Initiative, time management skills, adaptability, flexibility. Prison staff as an audience. Great. Purpose as a need. Yes, purpose. Interpersonal relationship skills. Absolutely. How to find a way to be more excited about their job and who they work with. Finding ways to use what the company makes in fresh and unusual ways. Yep. Creativity is huge. Greater accuracy in medical diagnosis. Yeah. There's a sticky here that says, currently there's a need in Minnesota for training or ways to prepare adults to become participatory, engaged education assistants or teaching assistants like paraeducators. It's an interesting idea. All right, let's give this another minute. Burnout prevention, cultural competency. Yes. Oh my gosh. All right. So what I want you to do now is on your own, and I'll do it too. Just toggle back and forth between these pages. And I want you to notice what's similar and what's different, right? What are some things? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all of you. Yes, you will have access to the Jamboard following the session. Good question, Cole. Yep, just keep that link. I'm not gonna get rid of it or anything. Feel free to type in the chat. What are some similarities that you see between the two pages? What are things that your current audiences need that other audiences also need? There are solutions for every audience. Chris noticed that it seems like there are more options in the business page. And I actually have a hypothesis about that, which is that on the first page, I basically asked you to write what you already do. And on the second page, I asked you to imagine a little bit more. And I think even that little bit speaks to the power of imagination and how we find new solutions when we look at things that are not our current experience. Social emotional learning, DEIA skill building, inspiration, collective, creative spaces, healthy work environments. Okay, those are commonalities that we see in all of them. The next thing that we are going to do is one moment. Breakout rooms. Yay. Okay. I love breakout rooms. Okay. Most of you have not been talking, right, for like an hour now. And now you get a chance to actually talk with each other. You will be randomly assigned to a breakout room with a handful of other participants here. These are your instructions for the breakout room. Number 1, choose a business audience. It could be somebody that you posted on one of those green stickies. It could be something else that you didn't post, but you thought of, okay? As a group, take 5 minutes just to brainstorm and think about how could a session in your primary artistic field address this need, whatever that need is. And then as a group, choose one idea and devise a rough outline of that session and designate a representative to report back into the main room. And this is a sprint of an exercise. I'm giving you 15 minutes to do this, but I know clearly you are a smart and experienced group of people, and I believe that you can do this. I also realize it's been an hour, and maybe as a group in the breakout room, you may decide to take the first minute just to stand up and stretch or grab some water or whatever you need to do. But this is your assignment. And when we come back in 15 minutes, your representatives will be sharing, and I'm super excited to see what you all come up with. The hosts here, we will be kind of popping into the rooms to make sure that you're all doing okay, see if you have any questions. But without any further ado, let's send everybody to the breakout rooms. I hope that was a fruitful 15 minutes for everybody. And now we are going to have each of you report your findings. So would the representative from group 1 please unmute yourself and share your discussion?
Amanda and Deb and Greg and Catherine.
Hi, it's Deb, and I'm going to report back for our group. We came from a diverse background. Amanda works in theatre. Catherine is also a violinist. Greg works in drum circles. And I haven't pronounced this correctly, but Abori T joined us from Guyana, and he's a ceramics teacher who uses music in his... Okay. We talked about, in business, accessing the gatekeepers of the C-suite, so getting to the people at the top. and how they need training in leadership, social and emotional learning, and how it really is important about how we frame those discussions. As you, on your first slide, that really came back to us in our conversations. We talked about the different methodologies we use, but the importance of the documentation that we present when we pitch, the framing of what you're going to be doing and how they can take that away and make it meaningful and building your brand, building your techniques for future use. I think that's us.
Thank you so much, Deb. Awesome. Nicole, is there anything that you want to share with group 1 before we move on to group 2?
No, I think that's great. Thank you for sharing. Group 2.
Awesome. Group 2, we have Jacqueline, Lucy, Mary Ellen, Nicole, and Danny. Who's your representative?
We didn't decide, but hi everyone. But do you want to say Mary Ellen? Because I feel like you conceptualized what we said, or I'm happy to if I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry. I think you're muted.
I kind of was off the top of my head synthesizing. And so if you can restate what I said, because
Okay.
we conceptualize things differently. And that's what we can introduce for confidence and creativity, but you did it better. Go ahead.
Oh, no. So we also similarly to group 1 came from different artistic backgrounds. English teacher, I'm sorry, Danny, and I forgot your artistic background, theater myself, and then collage and visual art, painting as well. And so there was once again this thought of how creativity can benefit those in, of course, the corporate world, experience working with engineers, insurance companies, things like that. And how can we use language that might excite corporate into being open to workshops on creativity? Because if we just say to a non-artistic, let's say, person, hey, we've got this great creativity workshop, they might not really say, okay, great, how does that apply to my work? So we said, again, similar to group 1, how do we use this for public speaking, leadership, confidence, getting to think outside the box for what you do, and then how can that benefit your work? And how can we really make that applicable and feel like that they're getting this benefit to make them more effective in their work? And yeah, I think that's, if anybody else wants to add. Thanks.
That's awesome. I love seeing some common threads emerging already. How about group 3?
Awesome. So we have Jamie, Madhu, Nicole, Rosie, and Sharon. Who's your representative for group 3?
We didn't decide, but I did take notes, so I will assign myself.
Thank you, Rosie.
We chose an oil business and identified that we thought their needs would be inclusivity and sort of a group thing of resilience, work ethic, and company culture as one other need. And then we had 3 different ideas of how to use 3 different kinds of arts, but as artists do, it became one idea all combined together. And so this would be, there was sort of a feeling in the group that we needed to show the oil executives or workers what the result of some of what they're doing is. So the beginning was going to be literature and poetry from Indigenous people that are being affected by oil companies, and including photographs, and that this would create some empathy and also be like scaffolding. First, they would listen to something. Next was dance, where they would be doing mirroring exercises and flocking, which would also help them to connect to each other and make it more egalitarian in the teams that were working. And then that would be going in towards music, where it would be about listening to each other, singing, and potentially creating an opera. And at the end of this project would be a reflection period of how this, affected them or what they took away.
Wow.
So we-
I love the specificity of
Multidisciplinary.
ideas here.
Yes.
I actually have a friend who used to work at Chevron and knows several people that are still there. So if you're actually interested in turning that into a reality,
I was going to say it's kind of ready to roll. I mean, it's off the shelf ready, you know.
Love it. Thanks, Gertie. I'm ready. All right, group 4. We have Ale, Catrice, Len, Jean, and Onika. Who's your representative?
We actually didn't decide one. Does anyone want to jump in, or shall I take a crack at it here?
Oh no, Glenn, I thought we did say yes, Glenn.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we actually looked at insurance companies. Okay, and talked about both maybe sort of internal applications of data analysis. Okay, from an artistic standpoint, but also we talked more about the power of teaching artists to work in the communication part of the health insurance business, since that is a deficit that business has to convey empathy, to convey the kind of things that insurance companies need to get out to their people. Didn't get into a lot of details, but had a very vibrant conversation across a couple of continents, I think, in our group here. So
fantastic. And then finally, group 5.
Yes. We have Asei, Azzy, and Jeff. Is anybody still here from group 5 that can share about the conversation?
And Young Lung was also in our group,
Oh, great. Awesome.
and I'm trying to tag him.
Don't know if he's still on the call. Can't
No,
see.
it looks like
Christopher was with us too.
Oh, great.
Christopher. Would you report back?
Okay, all right. In the end, we thought about the actual act of creative thinking, which is applicable to probably all art forms, but more appropriately, metaphorical thinking. And so we could think of problems in business, such as social interaction. And I suggested my metaphor is my 37-year marriage is a rose with thorns. So it's wonderful. It's good to validate that. And we learned how we can cross domains of thought from actual social interaction to something creative, something physical or intangible. And so from that, we're talking with Jeff and gang, we could create a sculpture. But first, we'll be writing the metaphorical idea based on our struggles or challenges or beauty of our experiences in our business environment. It's probably pretty broad there, Jeff, but that's my feedback.
I'll just add that metaphorical thinking can lead to having a sense of humor, which is often lacking in business settings. Everybody's too damn serious. So that's something I think a visiting artist program can also bring by loosening up, lateral leaping kind of metaphorical thinking.
That's excellent, Jeff. Yes, that's important. Absolutely. I guess I'm not funny, so I forgot that.
I think everybody has their own slight sense of humor. And again, to keep tying these threads together, there's literally a class at Stanford Business School about how to incorporate humor in business and how it helps. So, yes, you are absolutely correct. And these are things that the business world is acknowledging and is attempting in many ways to incorporate. And so the whole idea is that we are here and we can help them, right? So thank you all for participating in that. Hopefully by now you are convinced that there is a market and you can make money and you are qualified to do this and they do need you. And now you are wondering, but how? Right? So how do we actually make this happen? And I'm sure you're realizing, oh, we only have 5 minutes left in the session. How is she possibly going to get through all of this in 5 minutes? And the short answer is that I'm not. I'm basically going to invite you into further conversation. But in short, this is another thing that we automatically do in our teaching artist work. Start with who you know and what you know, and go from there. You work your way up. Form a partnership, as was already mentioned by group 3, right? Strength in numbers. Imagine how much more the possibilities are multiplied when it's not just you. Sharing the burden, sharing in the reward, and magnifying your impact. Also, remember, we are in an age where we can offer virtual options, live or pre-recorded. But ultimately, this is an invitation to join a working group, okay, where we can imagine and envision what this could look like in the future. When I submitted my application to lead this session, I had a moment where I was just dreaming big, right? Like, what if there existed a future in which all Fortune 500 companies had a regular series of teaching artist sessions, where there was maybe even like a teaching artist on staff? What if there's a future in which all teaching artists have a couple of regular business clients that they work with closely? What if there's a future in which there is a bigger, more, this interconnected web that we already have? What if we can amplify the power of that and help each other to reach audiences we've literally never even imagined, right? So these are the what ifs. Carrie's going to drop a link in the chat. I invite you to join me for the next 4 months to explore these questions and to figure out what our role is at this time, what we can do, what we can't do. I said here, what will we do? And the first thing I said is things that scare us, right? I think that as we saw in the poll, there are a lot of you who are interested in this, but just like don't really know how or what or why, and maybe it's scary and you don't think that you fit. So we're gonna explore that. We're gonna ask people questions. We are gonna ask teaching artist questions. We are going to ask the business world questions. That little survey that I did, we are going to blow that up and get some real actionable data. We're going to test our theories. And ultimately, the goal is that by the end of October, before holiday season hits, that we will have a how-to guide for teaching artists that will address a lot of these things about, what vocabulary to use when you're approaching a business audience that lets them know that they can take you seriously, how to frame your presentation, how not to frame your presentation, so that teaching artists in the future, whether that's the future 6 months from now or whether that's the future 5 or 10 years from now, don't have to be asking these questions anymore, right? That is the goal, and I invite you to join me. So click the link in the chat to sign up. Even if you're just curious, even some of you may be like, yes, hand all the way up. Some of you may be like, maybe, I think so. Feel free to sign up anyway, and we can figure out how to include you in the process. In closing here, I want to just really thank you all for trusting me with your time. I recognize that your time is valuable, and I really appreciate you spending it with me and all of the people here in this room in this conversation. I want to share one final anecdote, which is that 2 weeks ago, I was in Pittsburgh at the League of American Orchestras conference, and there were these threads of partnerships and teaching artists and business culture and innovation kind of woven throughout the 3-day conference. And one of my final sessions was with education and community engagement professionals. And it began with Eric Booth's YouTube presentation on the red wheelbarrow and the power of entry points. Eric had to jump off, I saw, to lead another session, but I'm happy that he was able to join us today. If you haven't seen this presentation on YouTube on entry points, you absolutely should. But as the discussion in this room progressed, we were also then provided with Eric's definitions of entertainment versus art. And this is a paraphrase, but entertainment is within what we know, and art is outside of what we know. And I had heard this before, but as I marinated on it for a bit, I realized that the word choice is so specific and important. It's not that art is what we don't know, it's that it's just outside of what we know. And if we think about that in the context of this conversation about teaching artistry and the business world, it really goes both ways. Yes, we are absolutely inviting new audiences outside of what they know. But also for many of us, the business world is outside of what we know, and we get to use our art forms to expand our own worlds in doing this work. At the end of that session at the League of American Orchestras conference, we were all encouraged to write an intention for ourselves for this next year on a Post-it. I took a picture of mine, and here it is. My intention is to be the open door, to invite people outside what they know. So I hope that I have been able to do that for you today in some small way. And I really look forward to continuing this work and this conversation with hopefully many of you. I want to give special thanks to everyone at the International Teaching Artists Collaborative, especially Madeline McGurk, and also a huge thank you to my co-hosts for today, Robert, Jean, and Carrie. So thank you to all of you for helping me, and thank you to all of you for coming. And that now concludes the official portion of this session. And as I said earlier, I'll be hanging out for an extra 30 minutes or so for some open dialogue, Q&A, whatever you want to chat about. So, the end.